Hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we are speaking with Michael Krentz, AIA Lead AP, President at Davis Architecture in Phoenix, Arizona, or Tempe, Arizona. Close to the same thing. Founded in 1991, Davis is an architecture, interiors, and urban design firm specializing in exceptional commercial and residential mixed-use properties. They create inspired architecture for everyday life for the nation's best corporations and developers and have designed 75 million square feet. Davis is in the business of maximizing the quality of life in place. Life in place is about making meaningful connections between people and place, movement and urban form, nature, and the built environment. Inspired architecture for everyday life involves a heightened sense of wonder, awe, and joy by such intensity of perception as to cause it to stand out in contrast to the experiences that surround it in time and space. Give it up for Michael Krentz. So I would love to hear, first of all, just kind of, I did an intro already so people know generally where you're at professionally, but if you could give me a brief history of you as a person and how you came to architecture and where you're currently at in architecture.
Brief history of me as a person, born in the last century in 1969 and grew up. Yeah, exactly. Grew up in the times where, honestly, it was a lot of playing outside and the things that were exactly the things that were a little bit more creative, a little less inspired by a screen. Even though I did watch plenty of TV growing up, which is why I'm so intelligent. But
what was your favorite cartoon?
I have to say, early on, even though it wasn't of my generation, it was Bugs Bunny and just kind of all of those old, really inappropriate
have
things.
Have you watched any of them since then?
Yes,
They're
and it's just
drastically inappropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
For today's youth. Yeah,
absolutely. But kind of growing in that world, it was anything from art to creating forts to doing things that kind of got you really with your friends and doing, heading out in the middle of the desert and building things, riding bikes, riding motorcycles too. But all of that kind of creativity, always was creative, loved to kind of put stuff together and solve problems and puzzles, and pushed me to a place where worked in construction when I was in high school. Absolutely loved it. Very inspiring with a general contractor, a local guy. And it was great to see how things went together and understanding how to put them together and realizing that I didn't want to swing the hammer my entire life really pushed me into, and my kind of prowess for art and design pushed me into architecture. So, and kind of evolved through, you get into architecture at that point, come out of school, and it really is working on the fine details and getting, I remember coming out and you design bathrooms and stairs. And
for me, it was garage master bedroom additions.
There you go. Yeah. I was working, really I worked in an iteration of this place that I'm the president of now, but worked there right out of school and had some great mentors that, roof drain details, a lamb's tongue, and how to draw that, how to put it into a building, what you have to do to make it look good, make it waterproof, and make it operate properly. So those kind of things fed that creative kind of puzzle solving building desire for me, and that just grew through you start to get into more of the wall sections and the more detailed drawings of the overall building, and then getting to a place where you get to design a little bit more and plug in, and then it's all the other stuff like contracts and interactions with cities and owners and gave me enough of a broad brush to actually run the company now. So
you were not a founder of this company. You started at this company and moved your way up to president.
Correct. Mike and Lisa Davis found the company, and it actually was, even though I had started with them at a different company, it was called D. Revere Partnership, Del D. Revere out of Newport Beach, California, and he and Mike are still really good friends. But he had a satellite office here, and I came and worked for Mike. Lisa at the time was the head interior designer at the office, so got a little intro into that too. And then it became Davis in 1991, and I've worked here at the Davis office 23 of the 33 years that we've been in existence. So
here's a bit of a weird question for you. I don't know that I've ever talked to anyone who started at a company and rose to president as far as on this podcast. I gotta wonder what the difference and difficulty is between, hey, I'm just gonna start my own thing, or I'm actually gonna rise to the top of this thing.
It's funny because it's the process is not as it's not as glamorous as I would love to say that it is. It was more of a we had a president that was exiting the firm, and there was a gap left. I was running our architecture side at the time, making sure the jobs were delivered on time and had staffing correctly and all that good. Right? But as that happened, I started to fill into the role and really take over those job duties that were running the company. And then it just, as a byproduct of that, became me as president. So
right.
It was
now, a bit of a follow-up on that. In this creative, commercial creativity that you and I are both involved in, I do it in photography now, used to do it in architecture for just a couple of years, and I said sayonara because it was just, I wasn't cut out for it, and you guys have more stick-to-itiveness than I do, and I applaud you for that. But in running a creative business, and this is also one of the talking points I wanted to get to, architecture as a passion versus profession. In running a company, the amount of business minutia and everything else that's required, what's your experience been like balancing, here's something I'm passionate about and I enjoy, but then you turn it into work and that can ruin it sometimes. And how do you balance that? How do you still find the passion for something that also probably causes you immense amounts of stress and anxiety because, well, you're running things, it's just natural.
It's what I've done is really leaned into my personality type. As I look at Mike Colby test, it says that I'm a starter. I don't follow through. I don't finish up stuff. So what I've actually done, Trent, is I surround myself with people that can take the ideas, and I can really generate the genesis of anything. Whether it's sitting with some of my designers, sitting with my production side, my project architects, my interior designers, we can really create great things that excite me and that keep that passion for the business alive and inspired me, and pass it off to them at that point. And I consider it like a pitcher. You're gonna throw a fastball, and the batter's going to connect, and you've got to trust that your center fielder is going to be able to field the fly ball, or field the grounder and throw it to second, and everybody's doing their job. So I try to surround myself with all of those great A players, very talented people that will take these great pieces, and because I get such a short period of time to be able to be in jobs, I can do that piece and see it all the way through, and then still deal with the minutia of running the business.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's really interesting. My wife is a bring people together and get stuff finished type of person.
Yeah.
And I did not know that, and she did not know that, and I did not know that I was a starter but not a finisher, like going into marriage and everything else. And we kept getting, like, we'd buy, back when they would give money to anyone who had a pulse in the early aughts, we bought probably 3 apartment buildings, and I bought them, I got them fixed up, yada, yada, yada. And then when it came to running them, I was just like, this is worse than death. I can't take it anymore. The babysitting adults and managing. And for her, she stepped in and did that. And that was not a problem. It was interacting with people. It was like, pseudo relationship oriented, and the management of a thing. Or if I come up with an idea for like where we live, I'm just endless with ideas and starting things, but I'm very difficult at following through. And the interesting part was, I realized, like, okay, I have this, but I feel like I have some very deep shortcomings that I can't finish. The thing I realized is it's not often that a person can have a personality type that both starts and finishes. That's just not typical. And I've asked her to do things like, hey, come up with, create a meal, or go pick out what to wear and just create an outfit. And for her, this stuff makes her deeply anxious. She's just simply not an idea person unless it's in a writing form. That's her form of creativity. But it's just really interesting to realize, like, I feel a purpose in your life too. You're not as much of an idea person. You're a bring people together and finish ideas person. And when we realized that, it really started to work a little bit better.
Absolutely. And I see that I could probably tell you the exact same story with my wife and I. And it's also fascinating how we break out of these. I work in a developer-based world, and know a lot about what they do, so it becomes a byproduct of what we do also, to buy houses and either fix them up and rent them out, or hold on to them for a couple years and sell them. So it's everything surrounding this world is just I really enjoy, but agree with you that I'm not the guy that goes over and fixes the toilet or has to deal with the air conditioner or anything else that's going to happen on that site. That's my wife. So
okay, so in the talking points that we have, architecture is passion versus profession. What's in that statement for you?
The passion versus profession I always see is a little bit more of the day-to-day job piece of it. Both of them, I try to marry up, and it was a fascinating question to me, because I try to marry up those two pieces as much as possible. Because if I bookend them into, well, this is just the job and having to do, go out to the job site and write, a field report, and then come back and type it up and post pictures on it and do it. And if I take the passion out of that it makes it very difficult for me to go do a field report and put the pictures in there. So it's trying to look at those things synergistically, if you will, that really kind of tie them together. And what can we do? It's taking notes, things like my notebook is a sketch. It's like,
nice.
It's like art.
Colors.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, exactly. And those kind of that passion that drove me to the profession, trying to tie those two things together consistently to make this a really enjoyable job every day. So I don't get hung up in the, sometimes I have to be kindergarten cop and I have to manage the kids. Sometimes I have to, sometimes I get to sit down and design a building and scribble with a couple of my designers, and that, both of those things I need to find ways to feed me. I think tying them together is what helps me do that.
What is it like rubber meets the road? What are some examples of how you turn your profession, you keep the passion in there in the way that you do this? What are some of the practices? Because I need to, I buy myself a brand new camera that is not for professional use every year. Yeah. And I use that camera to creatively take pictures without thinking and explore, and it keeps me engaged and active in composing, working with light, thinking about subject matters, waiting for the things that I see that I didn't see accidentally. That keeps me engaged in what I do. And that's a way of like, no one's paying for this. No one cares about it. Hardly anyone likes them on Instagram. But it's a way of staying engaged and creative, and kind of, for me, it's kind of like failing and learning from it, and then finding these occasional successes because I'm shooting in a way that I don't typically shoot. So it's a good exercise for me. That's what I do. How do you bring that into actually your day-to-day and how you do things?
So the passion for this is the design and creation of space. So let's just take field reports going out onto the job site. That is the true manifestation of that design, that original idea of the design and the creation of space and how it's coming together. And there's not a lot there. It's hard for people to see in 3 dimensions with a lot of, or it's probably easier for them to see in 3 dimensions than 2 dimensions. So taking something and being able to have drawn it, have had the original idea, and pull it into a space where now I get to go out and take a picture of it, write a field report on it, make sure that I'm noting it, and it's getting constructed correctly, where that's not the greatest part of the job, to have to babysit a contractor and making sure that design intent is met. It helps to bring that original design, that passion, the thing that really brought this building into existence, is now a part of what you see coming into existence. So that helps. It also helps me that I love to teach and mentor. So being able to help a young designer, take them out on site and walk them through, great, this is what you drew, this is how they're building it, and what are we going to learn from this? How are we going to do it better the next time? So
nice. Okay. That makes sense. Innovation in the industry, next talking point. AI and printable buildings, essentially 3D printing on larger scales, LEED platinum and all the other things. Where is the major innovations? Where are the major innovations coming from as you see it moving forward in architecture?
AI is huge. We utilize bits and pieces of it in our current day-to-day work. Anything from, we had a project recently that's an existing building that's got a brick skin on it. We wanted to come up with 2 or 3 options with how to renovate this building, how to bring it up to date and make it look a little more modern, clean things up, and used AI to work through different options with it, and got great results out of it. The client loved it, and they're currently pricing that. Anything from that to writing different. We've actually just developed. I've got a technology group that we work with that we've brought in to help us take the. I always like to say systematize the predictable. So predictable is a standard project initiation sheet and a proposal. And these are things that we can, with this automation process, we can go through the process. We can go through filling in some basic information about the client, the project, the locations, all of this. Check a few boxes. It writes a proposal for us.
Oh, wow.
Those are things that are going to help to change the way we do just our day-to-day work. I think in the industry, it's we were just asked recently to be the project or architect of record for a manufactured. It's a small accessory dwelling unit. And I say that pausing because you can actually stack it vertically. So we've got, just went out to their factory in Page, Arizona, and looked at their automation process. It's a newer company, and they've actually got a great process that it rolls through. And as more and more of that becomes automated, and you take the human factor out of it, the wall is always going to be the same. This wall is, the plumbing that goes in it. The more you can have that completed by either a machine, or as much of it by a machine as possible before it gets assembled by a human, the easier those things go together, the more cost effective they are, and then that'll get us to a point where, if we think big, these are less expensive units that we could put on a site and house people.
Right.
We can stack them vertically, we can get more dense, we can do these things. So automation in the industry is going to push us that way also.
Right.
So, and that's 3D printed buildings too. So
there's two things I want to try and ask you about so I don't forget. One, AI and checking your process. I'm wondering about that. Secondly, I wonder how much we shoot ourselves in the foot with things like automation, because as you automate, you lose jobs, but you do make things cheaper. So it's like this catch-22, if that's the right application of that is weird to deal with. But is AI moving into a position at all that you'd be able to use AI to help you sleep better at night, that it's kind of checking your drawings to say this step is actually 7-Eleven, and this thing lines up, and this structural thing, and this detail here being presented as well over here, this one got changed, but this one didn't, so they don't line up. You need to, is there a process of AI working in architecture like that yet at all? Because that was the hard part about architecture for me, was that more technical detail minutia of just making sure drawings line up and things get changed accordingly and all that.
Right. There's not an exact program or anything that's going to help me check a lot of that. There are automations in parts of it, mm-hmm. but I'll say honestly to you, Trent, nothing that's going to help me sleep better at night. I wish, and I hope that will be someday. I think it does. Yes. Are we going to get to the point? Is there this utopian world in the future where none of us have to work and we've got robots serving us everything and farming for us and building houses for us? And potentially not in my lifetime, but I don't know. I think it's
going to happen fast.
Exactly. I think there's an evolution to the process that will take it there. And we're going to get to the point where there are designs that come out that, respect the laws of physics and understand every part of not only the international building code, but the plumbing code and the electrical code and, materials, all of those things. Then it will start learning itself and be able to put together an assembly that really, I would say, eclipses what we can do as humans. Right. And I say that, and then there's the artist side of me that says that there's nothing that can be created that is not by the human hand, that can't be, that is just would represent something as beautiful as what you could create by getting your camera and taking a photo, because it's got your emotion in it. It's got your every second of your life that you've lived is really behind that camera and shooting that shot. And so I just don't see that.
How do you know that
as a computer thing? Yeah.
I've thought about that, and that's been my why is photography valuable and what makes it unique? And what you just said there is my realization, but something I probably wouldn't articulate to most people, because it's so hard to really believe that, but it's correct, which is a weird thing. How did you come to understand that?
It's my kids helped me understand that, honestly. I see this from a person standpoint.
Okay.
You're born. You're born. You are born you. You're given a name. You're Trent now, but you're of your mom and dad, but
Mm-hmm.
you aren't your mom and dad. There's nothing ever on this planet that's going to be you. Every second you live is individual and specific to what you do, and nobody could ever replicate that. So all of that stuff that's brought together has brought you to the talent that you have today to be able to pick the image and the shot. And sometimes it's, you may think of it as like, well, I just get this old camera that really isn't for this and I take this shot. But there's so much history in that brought you to the place where you adjusted the focus and the f-stop and pressed the button, and this is what it captured. And that's what I say is the background to what makes me me and be able to run this company the way that I do, and design the way that I do, and see things the way that I do, that I honestly just don't believe that there will, and I say this, but AI does it takes everything in the world that it can capture that's out on the World Wide Web, and brings all of that to bear in whatever it's producing. But I just don't think that I think that we have these great individual things that why art is so interesting, and why buildings are so interesting. And I mean, there's some definite dreck and stuff that just pollutes the skylines of any place that we live, but it's really everything that we bring from our lifelong adventures that make the art and the architecture. So
That's interesting. You've there's a very similar thread of thinking that to me, I realize that the creative process is something that pulls from all the moments of your life to inform what solution would work for the problem in front of you. And the more life you've experienced, the more ability you have to connect problem to solution. As long as you're someone who's open and is paying attention and takes those things in for that purpose, a person with an open disposition, I think, understands that, works in that manner, and is able to create. And by that, I mean come up with solutions for problems. Now, an artist creates, but they have, I wouldn't call it propaganda. I would call it more so, it's an expression of their experience in a medium where they create. And if someone can communicate a truth that they're experiencing that other people have felt as well but haven't been able to articulate it, that's when the art moves to the more national or larger scale and everything else, which is really interesting. Thank you for that. Let's see. Innovation in the industry. I think AI is going to be similar to what happened to photography, going from film to digital. I don't have to deal with nearly as much technical minutia and difficulty as far as changing light colors and everything else to get my shot. A lot of it's done post-production by an actual human still, Tim, who does an incredible job. In that if someone from 30 years ago was looking at what I do, they'd probably say, he's cheating. But the results that I'm getting have a look that is current to our generation as of now. I'm sure I'm somewhere towards the peak, if not descending on the other side. But it's a different aesthetic because I didn't have to worry as much about the technical issues. The creativity was able to be delved into more so than if I was gelling 100 lights in a day, to get everything to look right. We can move and shoot more creatively in a more time-effective manner today than you could in the past. The results are better. The composition, because of that, is better. The lighting is better, and the final image is better. But there's still just as much creativity. There's just not as much technical problem solving as far as those technical issues. So my hope is that AI will turn into something that allow for architecture, something that will allow more creative work rather than constantly worrying about the minutia of contract documents, and that legally everything's in line and that technically everything's in line. That part of the industry, I think after a while, is going to fall away, which does mean that you'll have offices losing massive amounts of people probably once that kind of system is a reality. Because where you were doing, more of the minutia of detailing and bathrooms and everything else, maybe that job will still be there, but it'll be a far more creative work that takes less time to do a small bathroom, but is more highly creative in that moment. Who knows? I mean, we can hope, and maybe by articulating that, hopefully that will actually happen. Who knows?
Agreed. And it's interesting because I see part of our iterate through the different phases of my career, from starting out with a drafting board and a parallel bar and all of my tools and lettering by hand, going to AutoCAD, moving into Revit. Now we've got these great 3D programs that we can draw up buildings very quickly. And even from the standpoint, honestly, Trent, my office would probably need to be 10 people bigger if I didn't outsource drawings. So I run through I've got a company in Brazil that we work with. We've got a company overseas in India that we work with. I've got 2 other local smaller shops. One's a kid that honestly works out of his garage,
Nice.
which I love.
3D modeling?
And 3D modeling. He does renderings for us, does great work for us. So these are all different parts of it that I think AI is that next step. It's going to be one of those things that become the, really, as you said, it's a part of it that gets us to a place where we can be more creative quicker, get to the answer quicker, get to those documents, to the place where we can get things built, get the space put up. So.
Yeah, I do hope that moving forward culturally, we start to value some type of labeling system that at minimum is labeled that AI was used in the making of this product.
Right.
Because it's important in the same way that knowing the ingredients of your food is important.
Right.
If it tastes good,
Agreed.
Great. But why does it taste good? I want to know. There's something there that, especially in imagery, in film, in audio, any of that is massively important, that we know this is a distortion from reality that didn't actually happen. It was something that was created, and it was not created from an emotional being. It was created from an algorithm of sorts. I just think that's a very, very important thing for us to outline, that we see it, we start to be able to identify it, and in my opinion, there needs to be legal ramifications if you're presenting anything as being natural that is not natural. And I can't quite say exactly why that's so important yet, but I can feel it. I just haven't been able to move it into an objective thing to defend.
There probably will be a book. I just read Darren Olean, his Fatal Conveniences, about the food and the stuff we put, even down to sunscreen and putting on your body. And I think there'll be a place like that in the future with just what you had said, where we're going to, we'll get into litigation with it. There'll be all kinds of battles just to make sure that we understand what we're viewing, and that it's, even I think of that for my kids too. I want to make sure that they understand that the image that they see is potentially not real. So it's don't measure yourself against something that is probably modified. So.
Well, yeah, I know in Europe, I think it's illegal to use Photoshop on beauty models and stuff. And I don't know exactly how I feel about that being illegal, but I know that it's better for us all to measure ourselves against reality rather than a distorted form of reality. So What do you do with that?
Absolutely agreed. Yeah. And I said yes, like I know that. I've heard the same things, so and absolutely agree with you.
The importance of education to improve project teams. How explain that to me, and then uh, basically how you implement that.
It's absolutely critical. One of the things that brought me into architecture was sort of constant learning. It's laws of physics don't change, gravity doesn't change, but they're building materials, design styles, things that we want to do as people. Older offices where we sat in big cubes to now in open spaces. So this constant learning has to be a part of what we are as architects. And to do that, I push a lot of our folks to licensing is a big thing, but there's also groups like locally. I challenge anybody to go out and sit on a design review committee, planning commission. In Phoenix, we have villages, a series of villages, and so I sit on a village planning committee. And these are things that help us to grow and learn and understand every facet of what we do as architects, anything from the public realm and what it brings to the private realm and what it costs to the design styles and things we bring to the table as far as our approaches to any project. So critical that we know that and we continue to learn as we go through things through our careers.
Sorry, I'm getting that ladder out of my background. Visual guy, I get distracted by things. Now, how do you actually implement that in your practice, like in a continuing ed kind of way, or how do you implement it?
One of the things we have, I've got one of my senior construction administration employees is Todd. His name's Todd Miller. Todd is great. He's been through everything you could ever think of in the field, and has solutions to that. A little bit of what we talked about earlier is bringing those different experiences to the table and solving problems creatively. So every week, it's now gone to every couple of weeks because we've gotten busy, but we have a thing called Todd Talks. And Todd will come in, he brings in things he's learned in the field. Maybe it was that week and there's a flashing detail, and he'll bring a picture of the documents and show how they were drawn and what we intended. And then he shows what was built, or what was asked of him from a request for information, or maybe it was a submittal that he had to approve, and teaches the younger staff how to do it. What's the process he goes through. This is what they drew, so this is what they built. This is why it works. This is why it doesn't. And those are the types of things that I felt odd about it at the beginning, but it doesn't turn into forced learning. Everybody loves it. Especially the younger kids. They like to get out in the field and see things going up, and they like to see what the issues were and how he's solving them and how they need to solve them in the future.
So he's basically a bee coming back and doing the dance in the hive to tell the other bees how to do the thing.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
Yes.
I like that. Because I remember when I first started out, like anytime I could get out of the office and go see a project, or that moment when you start to see the ground being broken for whatever you've been working on to be built, or to walk through the finished project of what you spent so much time on conceptually but never saw, and then all of a sudden you get to see the finished thing is a great moment. But then also to learn from it at that starting age, you just have so little experience, and as you go through it all, you get just time and time again, like, oh, I know how to deal with this. I've been through it. Here's how you do it. And for someone who's young to be behind someone doing that is just like, oh, great. Yeah, keep feeding me. I keep learning this stuff. It's great,
Absolutely. The lessons learned are the biggest the biggest catalyst for pushing you through your career, and making sure that you don't make the same mistakes. But there again, just as you said earlier, Trent, gives you a creative way to solve a problem in the future, and really create something that doesn't turn into a problem. So.
Yeah, and you can do that with like how to handle clients, how to handle difficult clients, how to handle estimates, actual details in the field, and how to handle difficult contractors, how to tell people you did this wrong, you're going to have to blast it out and do it over. So did you ever have to be the guy who went out and like with the clipboard had to tell contractors like, you did this wrong, you have to do it over?
Yes. And the funny first story I have is I had drawn the drawings. I had a great construction administration lead at the time. His name was Ron Hand, and Ron was a phenomenal mentor, helped me tremendously. So I had drawn the drawings. I reviewed the shop drawings there. Went out for a site visit, walked on site, throwing my tape on the lobby of this office building. It was a 3-story office building. The elevator pit's dug, the stairs foundation is in and set, and I've got enough where I can throw it. And it was off. It's off by 8 inches. And I'm like, I can't have this. I've got a ceiling. We're going to have to move this. And what I ended up realizing at the end of the day, lessons learned, is I had run my dimension string to the wrong side of the CMU that was in the pit. So the lobby was 8 inches shorter. Not a huge deal. We were able to satisfy the client's needs and what they had to go through. It was fine. We had enough buffer built in, but those are those great learning lessons that I will never forget it. I can still picture myself out there that day with my hard hat on and feeling like I was the big guy saying that they did it wrong and they built it incorrectly and it was my fault. So
when I was in architecture school, there was a church being built in our town where the school was, and they had put in a series of concrete steps, and because the cant of the step was too far out. Yeah. And so there wasn't enough clear space, and they had to blast the whole thing out. And at the time, and in a small town, it was like $50,000 just to do the steps. Yeah. Because they're pretty, and that was just something that sat in my head. That was like, always make sure you have this much clear and don't, and I'd just lie awake at night with these, fixating on these little minutia,
Yeah. And there are a tremendous amount of complexities. My last full-time CA job, construction administration job, was for a high-rise tower in downtown Phoenix. And I remember walking through the site. I had actually taken a tour of kids from the office on just a walk through. And there are so many moving parts and so many things to do and to organize and to make sure things are happening. You've got a team of people working with you, but it's incredibly complex. And to think that something wouldn't go wrong, like the slope of the riser, your angle of your riser is not going to maybe get put in incorrectly, it's very short-sighted to think that things won't go wrong. And that's where you get to where you have creative problem solving. You got to figure out how to do it, So
fun times when you run into those high confrontation issues where you're having to tell a very, very angry contractor that we've moved to the point of wanting to hear about the inspirations throughout your career. Why have they been valuable? Who were they? Why were they inspirational?
And I thought about this a lot because it's fascinating that I've drawn inspiration from a lot of different places that weren't necessarily architects. Inspiration from contractors, inspiration from a college professor that was my anthropology teacher. He was an archaeologist, anthropologist, and he was like Indiana Jones, but those kind of inspirations that he brought from, he kind of tied everything back from his archaeology standpoint back to historic architecture and brought me into it that way. All the way to, simple garden and space design, hardscape stuff, and people that have been just absolute landscape architects that have been inspiring to me. The full picture of a space and everything that's needed to bring a project to completion takes those little bits of inspiration from those people and the talents that they bring. And I'm amazed even by some of them today, and some of my consultants that I work with, landscape architects, even civil engineers, and their creativity in designing spaces to make sure water can be retained and it doesn't look like a massive yucky rock-filled pond. So, it's hard to really pinpoint on a single person. I think it's a lot of different facets that help me get to the place where I can do my job really well.
I always found that the people who I found inspiration from were those who just exuded the passion for what they were involved in. I had a architecture professor, his name was Arpad Ronasegi, and he was an incredible, he could sketch incredibly, and he was really interested in very, very modern and forward-thinking, minimalist, in some sense, designs, and his use of combining materials and looking at like the new ways of arranging things, and it was all more out there because it was new, and so you're taking risks, but even though it was new, he was just you could tell it excited him. He wasn't telling you about the importance of something already established. He could just not control how excited he was about potential new things that we could do. And
Right.
That to me was interesting. It was like mining ideas and concepts in visual and built space rather than if mining new ideas, rather than, I feel like more traditional or classical architecture is more so following a rule book,
Right.
which if you follow the rules, it will aesthetically not be ugly. I get
Right.
that.
Right.
That it's a little too safe in a sense.
Yeah.
It's just kind of boring. It's beautiful, but it's boring because, well, I've experienced it before. And that works for some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, the thing that excited me was someone who had that exuded passion for that newness and that design capability. And he would combine like Photoshop, hand drawings, photographs, and make presentations around concepts, and then how you could actually use steel in a different way with wood and concrete. And
Yeah.
it was just all very exploration and fun. That was really inspirational for me.
And I do love the people that can think outside of the box and out of the envelope to really see things in a different way. And you ask about the inspiration too, is every day there's inspiration. It's fun to, honestly, and it sounds goofy, but to put together a great team. And when you get a team that can work together from the ownership side, and your consultants and your team internally, your contractor, even the city, and bringing a lot of these, your authority having jurisdiction and inspector on site, and having and developing those relationships to create something great inspires everybody through the process. So it's a a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a psychological game, but there's the process by which of, being a good leader and being somebody that inspires a team is something that's very important, I think, through any of these processes of creating space and finding those people that can do that. They're, again, inspire me in different ways lately, or daily, pardon me. And they're people I work with. They're people I work for. They're people that are consultants to me. And these are the folks that really create if you can bring them together in just the right way, you create beautiful space. So.
Right. Yeah, it's not that different than saying, all right, we need foundation, so concrete, stone works well in this situation. So this is the first part of our team. This part works well in compression. This part works well in tension, and this part is a little bit more natural. Bringing that design together to speak of what it is, and when it really hits the mark, it's just, And to do that with people, creating a system, making a architectural business that takes the right personalities, puts them in the right spot, and gets them to work well with everyone adjacent to them and where they're going and where they've come from. That's something that I did not value until I, own my own company here, where I have just one employee, and now we have, potentially kind of a second employee, and we have contractors that we work with a lot. But to see when it works well, you see how incredibly foundational and first importance it is.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely,
I imagine that's probably part of the reason I didn't stay in architecture, is because I'm not great. I'm not a great manager, not a great leader, and I'm not someone who's good at being led either. It's like, if I was in the military, I'd be a sniper. That's about it. But the luck that I had with hiring my studio manager, Tim, probably a decade ago now, I had maybe some intuition, but there was no articulate thing that told me he's the one. Get this guy, because he will be the best employee ever, and he will make your life so much easier. Right. It just was luck. But from having gone through that, I then realized, he's incredible because he picks up where I drop off, and I pick up where he drops off. And to design that human relationship that then executes on the thing that is your profession is just a whole nother next level of design that I think you can't really do until you've gone through the process of being put in that situation of one of those pieces working in there by people who have gone through there. And then through doing that, you get to a place where you can support others in that, you can design and work in that, and you can give back. And interestingly, a lot of the people I've talked to, like ourselves, middle-aged, that are creative, find a lot of fulfillment in now sharing and teaching as a means of finding that deeper fulfillment, rather than constantly being the one working on the creative design problem. It's okay, I know how to do this. I've done it for 20 years, and I want to move on to actually kind of a more difficult challenge if you're talking about managing people, in my opinion.
Right.
So I'm just now seeing the real value and difficulty of that, and I don't think I'll ever be a person who can achieve something like that. But good on you for being able to do that and rising to the top as president in your company, and thank you for outlining that for me a bit there as well. But
yeah, thank you. Very well stated. Very well stated.
well learned. I didn't know it before, and now I know it. So
yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. I think it's the I wish I would have known all of this in my 20s, but not sure you can.
Yeah.
20s, 30s, and 40s, but not sure you can. And it really gives us to a point where you're exactly right. It's much better and much more fulfilling to give the knowledge and
Right.
in a way that's acceptable and palatable by others.
Right.
And especially the younger kids that, and I think they do. I think they really appreciate it. So.
Yeah, there's certain things that you can teach an individual to do, and there's certain things that they have to have the experience to make them qualified to be able to do. And to me, management of talented creatives, unless you've come up through them, you're just not going to understand them, because creatives are, I know. Creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just don't get to that position unless you went through it. And then you have the empathy to transfer to those that, you're leading. But then you also have that experience to pull from that they respect. And especially, I think, when you're leading creative, they need to know that in some sense you have experienced it and you haven't just been taught it, because they value that.
Yeah.
I think that's my realization for this podcast that we should probably wrap up with.
And I absolutely agree with you. I think it's that process of learning through doing that, and you have to have the experience to know how to attack all of the different problems and all of the different things you're going to teach the people that help them do the same thing in the future.
Yeah. Well, Michael Krentz, thank you. Krentz or Krantz? Krentz. Right?
Krentz. Yes, Krentz. Yes.
Thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with us and share your experience there at Davis Architecture in Phoenix. How can people see more of what you do and learn more about your firm and any personal creative experiments you got going on the side or anything else?
Our website's the best, thedavisexperience.com. And
I like that.
It kind of, as any good architecture firm would do, we show our good buildings on there. All the buildings we do are good, but some of our top ones, which I love. And to you too, Trent, this has been great. Absolutely love meeting you.
Well, thank you.
Love your background, the photography too. I think we share a lot of the same passions in kind of parallel fields. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.